I'm Kevin Jacobsen of Gold Derby here with Randall Einhorn, director and executive producer of Abbott Elementary. So, Randall, I'm curious for you what Quinta Brunson's vision was for this show that felt special to you, that was like, I have to be a part of this.
I mean, I think the thing that first initially attracted me was obviously Quinta,
Mhm.
and secondly, her vision for the show, which was to tell the story of these real life heroes that I think are under recognized, under acknowledged, underpaid. Everything you can use, every word you can describe them, I think begins with under. And those people are really important to everybody. I mean, everybody has a teacher that meant something to them, or influenced them in some way. So I think it's a really vitally important story, and it's one that, I don't know, they're heroes, and it's a really cool story, and it's just, especially, what they do is they know what the ceiling is, and they know what people give their life to that, and that's just amazing. And I think that's a story worth telling, and it certainly lends itself to a documentary format. Like, I would make a documentary about this. I just happen to be making a mockumentary about this.
Right. Well, I mean, in terms of production itself, I've heard just from talking to some of the cast members that there was just a confidence in that vision that helped them in their performance even from early on. So I'm curious just what your collaboration was with Quinta and the other producers in terms of just your ability to bring your own ideas and trying new things that might not be in the script. Like, what is that day-to-day process?
Well, I mean, the my relationship with the executive producer, my other exec EPs, is it's just easy. It's a conversation, and I remember we were shooting the show, the pilot, and I think it was Cheryl Lee Ralph. She was like, "This is like jazz. We're throwing stuff down, and you're picking it up, and because a lot of the pilot, I actually operated the camera. I shot most of it. I was director, and also I operated the camera because I wanted to influence what it looked like. And I think when you're that close to them and that intimate, you can change things on the fly. You can mix things up. So Justin, Patrick, and Quinta are all very, very open to trying things, and also, I'll shoot the longest version of a scene, and I'll also shoot the shortest version of a scene. And sometimes there's actually scenes that I might shoot as a talking head and say, look, I think we should shoot this as a talking head as well, because it's a building block to the story. And if we lose that building block, the story's not as strong. In the pilot, there was a scene that was a talking head that I said we should shoot it as a scene. And Quinton's like, yeah, cool, let's do it. And, it's not like you have all this time that falls out of the sky for you to do extra things. But we shot this scene, and it was a scene where the banner gets dropped down and Janine comes back in full of steam. And that could have been a talking head. I'm sure it would have been great. Quinton would have made it great. But I just decided to make it a walk and talk to give it some energy, and to start the scene, her busting through the doorway, just full of steam, talking to Jacob and Gregory. So there's a lot of collaboration, and we really mix stuff up, and everybody's open to hearing a note. That's the one thing I've really love about this crew, is everybody's willing to try anything. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, these characters, they're so just very well defined from the beginning without being like stereotypes. It feels like I know a person like Melissa, or I know a Jacob, or I have like a mentor like Barbara. How much did you find just from the actors' performances that they were just bringing something more or something different compared to what was maybe even on the page that you maybe took note of at the beginning?
I think I have to acknowledge that all those characters are so clearly defined and clearly written that Melissa could not have a Barbara line. Janine could not have a Barbara line. Their lines are not interchangeable. It's very reassuring, very comforting when you read a script and you don't need the title of a character to know who's talking. That's fantastic. That's very clearly and distinctly drawn characters, and that's just a pleasure. You know, there's our very first day of filming with Shirley Ralph, we had a classroom of 30 kindergartners, and they're just going crazy because it's during COVID. They hadn't been in the classrooms. Most of them had never been on a film set before, and they hadn't seen other kids. They hadn't seen their peers in a year and a half because of COVID. And so they're just going crazy. And the ADs were like, guys, quiet, please, quiet, please. Excuse me, quiet. Samir, quiet. And Quinta and I were trying to get them to be quiet. And Barbara, Shirley Ralph walks in, she goes, "Good morning, class. I am your teacher. My name is Mrs. Howard. What do we do when we ask you to be quiet?" Be quiet. And 30 kids like, "Be quiet." I look at Quinta, I'm like, oh my God, we did some good casting. Because it was actually the scene. It was actually the scene where Quinta's, I'm counting to three, or I'm counting to six, and to get him to quiet down, and Barbara Howard just says, "Sit down," and they sit down immediately. But it was like life imitating art, because Shirley Ralph was Barbara Howard in that moment. She came in with and just commanded the respect of them. And I have to say, all of the characters, all of the actors have such clear understanding of who their characters are and what they would do and why they would do it. So it's really nice to have that as a starting point. There were some adjustments. There were some things that, I gave notes on, some acting notes, absolutely. But when they all know their characters and they understand them so clearly, the adjustments are so fine that you're able to get these really nice, lovely, nuanced performances, because you're not giving, half the work's already done. All I'm doing is I'm getting cream and gravy. It's great.
Right. Well, another part of it is this mockumentary style, and where you get these sort of secret spy moments, where they don't know that the camera's on them, and you tend to see a more honest reaction to whatever it is they're going through. Like, Gregory and his maybe feelings for Janine, or like some of the moments with Barbara, because she doesn't always, she's not always disclosing things to the camera. So it's a lot of us seeing what's on her face, basically. So I think that's usually very rewarding for the viewer. Can you talk about just picking and choosing those moments where we do see someone sort of accidentally showing their true feelings, and, whether you have like a favorite moment from this first season?
Well, I mean, I think the one for me, the mockumentaries, the key to it is washing it with this veneer of authenticity and making it seem like, making the viewer feel privileged to see something that they shouldn't necessarily see. Right. So my instinct, whenever anything is more intimate or more private, my technique with the camera is to always back up, and that gives the viewer the feeling that they're seeing something that they normally wouldn't be privy to, and it's actually a little bit more precious, that they're catching something that's really juicy because it's happening without a camera a foot away from them. And I think that and that comes from like shooting reality and documentaries, is that anytime somebody's having a really private conversation, back up, let them have it, and it looks better and it feels more authentic. But those looks to camera, a lot of those, people do that on their own. But I'm also giving the note that I think at this moment, you're aware that the camera caught you looking at Janine. So maybe you might want to look to camera, catch yourself, do a little double take, and then maybe cover up a little bit, which is just so easy when we're playing with those actors. It's just easy. Did I answer that question?
Yeah. I mean, did you have like a specific one that stood out to you?
I mean, I think Gregory being caught is always pretty fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think there was one, there was a talking head at the end of, I think, episode 6, where I see that Janine is kind of really enjoying Gregory. And I added this bit at the end of the talking head, which is a documentary technique that I've used, where you don't say anything. You just sit there and you go, So you'll ask the question and you'll just sit there and, and then that's where you get the real answer or the real information. Because I remember this talking head, you know, he said, so Gregory seems kind of cool, right? And because I'll lead them in with questions, just like a documentary. And she goes, yeah, he seems pretty cool. He seems like a good guy. I'm like, and she goes, what? And great, that's all I needed. Like, what? Yes, there's something there. It's something there, and I can see it, and you're covering it. So that was a really, I thought that one was really cool. I mean, anything where you catch him with her, because he can't hide his affection, and that's quite delicious. And I'll tend to lean on them a little bit, like with the camera, like I'll move towards them and they feel the camera getting closer, like I'm caught. So it's really fun to be a character and to be playing with them in those moments.
Absolutely. All of Gregory's reactions, just his face, you know, Tyler's face is just perfect for this kind of format.
Yeah. There's a scene where they're like, you know, hey, you want to come with us? We're going to IKEA or shopping for a new bed. You know, my boyfriend, you want to come? He asks her out, and she says, oh, actually, my boyfriend's coming to pick me up. And he's, oh, go, cool, that's cool, yeah, great. And she says, well, we're just going to IKEA. We're going to go pick out a bed. Want to come help us pick out a bed? He's like, yeah, that would be great. And you can just see him sinking inside. It's really, really funny. That was one of my favorites.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the obvious shows that people also will recognize you for is The Office, which you worked on for several years as a cinematographer and as a director. Just curious if there were some like sort of tried and true methods just from working on that show that you felt sort of naturally has maybe found their way onto Abbott Elementary in a way.
I mean, I think the, you know, shows like The Office and Parks and Recreation have certainly laid a lot of groundwork for viewers understanding what they're watching. I think it frames it. They're all familiar with it. They know the show, so that it's easily digestible and accessible to them. But certainly the interview techniques, I think I learned a lot about that from The Office. Is if I want to give somebody a more agitated, if I want a more agitated response from somebody, I might ask them in a little bit more of aggressive nature, or a way that might bristle them a little bit, and they'll inevitably give me a stronger answer, which is really fun. It's really fun to do that, and not every talking head does that, but sometimes the way that you ask the question will inform how the answer is given, will affect how the answer is given. That's really, really fun, and that I certainly learned on The Office. There's a lot of techniques that I think that we did on The Office, like backing up, getting away.
Right.
You know, you would always leave room for Jim and Pam to grow, for their relationship to grow without the effect of the camera. And you don't really want to catch them too much, because then they'll hide too much. So you give them a little, you give them just enough room to show exactly what you want.
Yeah, that's true. Some of their bigger moments are from that backing away, like the proposal and, you know, obviously their first kiss. Like yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I remember I shot that first kiss. I was in the kitchen, and I was like on a really, really long lens, like 350 millimeter lens. It's really hard to hold with the camera still but that just, it allowed it to happen, and it made it feel real, and it made it much more powerful for the viewer, because it has this veneer of authenticity.
Absolutely. Well,
It's funny. It also, I
mhm.
actually feel it too. When I'm shooting it,
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm getting choked up because I think I'm catching something really, and I know that it's John Krasinski and Jenna Fisher, who I'm going to see in craft service in a minute. But you're part of it. So as filming it is, it's really fun. It's
Mhm.
complicated. It's much more complicated than just doing a normal comedy, but it's just so rich, and there's so much stuff that you can find in it, and so much stuff you can add to the comedy, I think.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking again to your previous work, I mean, The Office has certainly endured, and we see this whole new generation now really embracing it. And back in the day, you were a camera operator on Survivor, which has continued all these years later. I still watch it. I still love it. What is your relationship to those kinds of past projects like that do have that kind of enduring factor? Like, do they sort of stick in your mind still, or is it just like you're on to the next one sort of
Oh
thing?
no, I mean I mean, particularly The Office, we had a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Hmm.
It was really, Steve Carell, just like Quinta, he just set the bar so high, and was such a great guy. I mean, I just remember that we giggled. We giggled so much. It was crazy. We would lose time that we should have been shooting scenes because we're giggling and we couldn't stop. And you have to, everybody has to go take 5-minute breaks because you're giggling so hard because you're having just that much fun. Um, no, I think back on all those things as, very fondly. Um, I'm really proud to be part of all that.
Yeah. Well, I also do think that Abbott Elementary is the kind of show that does have the potential to have that kind of enduring factor. We're just in the first season, but we've already seen such a big positive response. Can you talk about just why you think the show has already sort of had this big groundswell of support, and also just how you've been sort of taking that in over the past year or so?
From the moment we started shooting the pilot, it just felt right. Everybody felt like the casting was just so beautifully done. The script was very well written. We'd been through it all. Every character knew who they were. When we were shooting the pilot, it felt like we had been doing it for working together for years. And now it still does. We've only shot 13 episodes, and it feels like we've been going for ages. Like, I know these people really well. They're my friends. I remember on the premiere night, December 7th was my birthday, and we were finished filming, and like Chris Perfetti and Janelle James, they hadn't been home in 14 weeks, and they should have flown home, but I invited everybody over my house to watch the show together and for my birthday party, and they stayed an extra 4 days in LA to come to my house for my birthday party, and we hung out together till 2 a.m. It just the group, it just feels right. When we're not filming, they're just sitting there shooting the shit. Like they're in the teacher's lounge shooting the shit. They're just like, those actors knowing their characters so well puts the show so far toward, down the path to success. I think we're not really finding it. We found it, and now we're playing with it and having a really good time doing so. And that's not always the case. It takes time to find a character, but these are well-defined characters. And I think that it's because, like, Barbara Howard she's Quinta's mom. That's who, she's modeled after. So I think when those characters come from such a real place, it just, in writing them, they feel so true. Everything feels truthful and earnest and doesn't feel like a joke. I'm so that, I think, is what's going to help the show, last the distance. I think it's going to really, because they're drawn from real life experiences, because everybody's had a teacher. Right. Every cast member can talk about a teacher. Shirley Ralph's father was the first Black principal in America. Her mother was a teacher. Lisa Ann Walter's mother was a teacher. Everybody's got a story about a teacher, and I think they're all and what those teachers mean to them. So I think everybody's drawing on that when they're performing their character, which is really cool, because it comes from a good place, and a place of yeah. I mean, we've all had teachers like that really meant something to you, and I think being able to draw on that is a really cool thing for the actors.
Yeah, and I think people are responding to the authenticity of the show for sure. And for those of you watching, unfortunately, we're out of time, but subscribe for more interviews and go to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Thank you so much, Randall.
My pleasure.